Hey, everybody, it is Tim Gillette, and this is another episode of the Tim Gillette Show. I get to interview some of the coolest people on the planet. Why? Because somewhere along the line, I met them, I got to know them, or I connected with them, and they said, hey, yeah, I'd love to be on your podcast. So this show is just all about introducing you to them and letting you get to know who they are and how they're helping the world out there today. Today's guest, John Robertson. All right, I know John here from the Dallas area, and there's several different, shall we say, professional networks that we're part of. But this is going to be the first time we've ever done a thing together where we basically get to know each other on air. So I'm going to bring John up here, ask him a bunch of questions, have some fun. You guys have fun and listen in. All right, tune in, put your questions in the comments, and maybe we'll address them while we go through the conversation. In the meantime, let's have fun with John A. Robertson. How you doing, John?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Tim.
I'm telling you, I mean, us professional people here in the Dallas area, we got to stick together. We've been hoarding up in our houses for so long. I'm ready to get out and get to meetings here in Dallas. How about you?
I've been getting out, but early on it was kind of tough when they were closing the churches on us, and we couldn't go to church. We couldn't go to our events, and of course, I am part of Texas Legends, and it got canceled this year, and I can't wait until Texas Legends starts back up November, December. And Tim, are you part of Texas Legends?
Actually, I've got season tickets for the Dallas Mavericks. Well, I support Mark Cuban more than you do.
I got a great story from a game I went to last year. I went to the game, and it was the Seats for Veterans. I think they call it that, Seats for Veterans. And the seats. And for halftime, they had God Bless the USA. Now I just drew a blank.
Oh, the country western guy from the 90s.
Now I drew a blank. I'm so sorry. Yeah. God Bless the USA. Okay, so I had heard him 30 plus years ago. I'm in Nashville, and I go to a concert at Kenny Rogers, and he said, hey, I got this guy from Las Vegas, brings on Lee Greenwood, and he said, he's got a new song he wants to sing for you. And I hear God Bless the USA. Last year, a year ago, before COVID, I'm at a November game, Seats for Veterans. And at halftime, Lee Greenwood is there, and he sings God Bless the USA. So around my seat, somebody said, who is this guy? I've never heard of this. And I said, this is the original guy that did God Bless the USA.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to be 30 plus years of seeing him first sing it and hearing him sing it at the Dallas Maverick game.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've carried a lot of people over. I was down there one time, and you're probably not into wrestling, but in the 80s and the 90s, my dad and my brothers were into wrestling, so I watched it. And the guy who was into WWF wrestling back in the 80s called Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, yes, I remember him.
He was there one night. I mean, and our seats at the Mavericks are literally, I mean, I can see Mark Cuban where he sits. All right. I could probably spit and hit him. All right. And that's where Sergeant Slaughter was sitting. And the whole time it's like, I can't go down to that rung because I don't have floor access, but I could just about, shout down to him. And I was like, man, I know that guy. That's it. He was Sergeant Slaughter. You know what I mean? And one night, I think Dennis Rodman was sitting there one night and everything. It's like all the celebrities we see sitting there, and it's just mind blowing. So that's my next goal, is to get floor seats down there. So,
that's what you need. I know the guy. I want to say his name's Dick, the guy that's real colorful and dresses up. Believe it or not, he used to be a Prestonwood guy that would come to the Friday morning men's Bible studies.
Yeah. He
was a real estate guy, and next minute you know, he's this old dude wearing these fancy clothes and getting himself on camera all the time.
Yeah. I know him for motorcycle riding. Him and I rode a lot of motorcycle runs together.
You're right.
Yeah. And yeah, he's been an active member here in an upstanding citizen in the Dallas area. He's done a lot. He's when it comes to the Mavericks, he's got floor seats. Like he's always on the floor, and you can tell who he is because he stands out with all the bright colors. But yeah.
Well, okay. So let's talk about your motorcycle. You see Elvis in the background.
Yeah, I never got to meet that guy, Elvis. I mean, he was a little before my time, but still, he's out there. I know who he is.
Okay, so I work with a guy in Palm Springs. His
Uh-huh.
Greg McDonald. He worked for actually the Colonel. So Elvis and the Colonel for 27 years. And there's a guy that he's working alongside, Keith, that's a big motorcycle guy. He most recently bought one of Elvis's motorcycles from one of the movies. He just bought his Shelby Cobra from one of the movies. And they're doing all kinds of stuff together lately. But there's another guy that you need to know that does these motorcycle rallies. And his name is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Burrows. And he has a Victory for Veterans, and he has a Warriors for Life, in which he does these cross-country motorcycle rallies to raise money for not only those, but one thing called RX Medical Debt. And what they do is they relieve the medical debts of veterans and first responders. And I mean, they've raised millions and millions of dollars that have eliminated hundreds of dollars of medical debt. But his name is Lieutenant Colonel, well, he retired, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Burrows, Mikel, and he lives in Colorado. But he does it across country, and he'll raise a couple $100,000.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I have, I mean, in my years of riding, I mean, I rode for close to 30 years. I sold my last bike in 2018. It doesn't mean I won't get one again. At just the time I was like, okay, for now that chapter's just done for a while. And, you know, in Success North Dallas, the IT guy that's there, and I can't, my mind skipped. Neil and I've known each other for years because of motorcycles, and we do a lot of stuff together as well. So it's good. A lot of things that the people do with motorcycles to raise money for charities. I mean, are you into riding, or are you or not?
Well, believe it or not, I was a marathon runner. Probably when I was about to turn 40, I decided I wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and I joined the Cooper Fitness Center. I was there for 16 years. And the first year I found out, okay, you got to run 320, under 320 to qualify for Boston. And I think I ran 3:15 the first time. My best was 3:09. I ran Boston Marathon 6 times, and then I ran Athens Marathon when I was 50 years old with a group. Jeff Galloway was one of the top people of runners. He was he's the one who started Fidipides, which I think is the first running chain.
Yeah, yeah.
And I went with that group to Athens, Greece. But no, to answer your question, one time I was going to run across country as a runner to raise money.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a bunch of sponsors. And at the time I was living in Torrance, California, and I was ready to go from Torrance to the East Coast. And I never got to do it. But there was a gentleman that I lived in Miami, and he came from New York to Miami and had just raised money. And they were about to do a big event with the Miami Dolphins. And it was raising money for how many miles you could run around this little mile track they had set up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I aligned with this guy that had just finished doing a New York to Miami thing. And I actually ran more miles than him that day. I think 50 miles for the charity function.
It's you know, I mean, I've been part of a lot of charity stuff already, and I really got heavy into it, into helping a lot of them here, you know, Dallas area and stuff. When I worked a part-time job for Starbucks, because they're very active in trying to help, you know, community causes, and never, I mean, I got to tell you, to me, and my coach now is always telling me, you know what I mean, be involved, find something that's close to your heart, what matters to you, and
yes,
you know, he's so right about that. I've connected to so many people who are doing so many good things, you know, all across the country, just because I started doing that here in the Dallas area. Yeah.
Well, probably the greatest thing that I've seen happen in uniting the nonprofits is June Hunt and the Hope Center.
Well, yeah, June. Yeah, I know June. Yeah. Great. You're right. She's one of the greatest here in the Dallas area.
I mean, to have 50 to 60 nonprofits be under one roof and be able to jointly do things together and have, you know, a reduced cost for their rent and facilities to be able to have a banquet hall and everything that June's done, for her to utilize her wealth for something like that, it just blows me away what she's done. And right now, the president is Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. If you know that, Tim.
Yeah, I know. I know Alan West. Yeah. It's just, it's interesting when you look at it, you know what I mean? John, across our country, how often so many things are centered right here out of Dallas, Texas. Isn't it awesome to see that I moved here. I wasn't born here. I moved here. I don't know where you were born, but it's just, when I got here, I was always in awe of all the things that were rooted out of Dallas, Texas, that were world changing. You know what I mean? Like June Hunt, all right, all these ministries, even a lot of the churches in the Dallas area that are, they're impacting the world, all right. And it started with their own backyard in Dallas, and then they spread out around the world. So,
well, Bill Bright started Campus Crusade for Christ, and most people won't know this, but the person that gave him the money for that Jesus film that's been shown all over the world from so many people, most people won't know that Bill Bright went to and got a check for more than $1 million from Bunker Hunt. So
wow.
Hunts that you could think of, Bunker Hunt wrote a check for what became the Jesus film.
Wow. That is just, that's impactful. All right. That you got that kind of connections. And that $1 million has caused more people to see the gospel around the world for that one-time investment. It's just mind blowing. Yeah.
And then you got a guy like Leroy Mitchell, who owns Cinemark. He partners up with a guy, and they start building orphanages in Africa. And they've got a couple hundred of them now built in Africa. And what he does is he goes in these orphanages, he puts a little movie screen in the orphanage, and everybody in the town comes and they see things like the Jesus filming.
Yeah.
And it is amazing the people we have in Dallas, Tim.
It is. To me, it's a great success story. It's one of the reasons why I love staying in this town. So, well, John, let's talk a little bit about your business, all right, and what you're associated with. Now, you're working with Excellent Cultures. Is that correct? Now you're working for them. You don't own it, right?
I don't own it. I met a gentleman who relocated his company, just like many others are doing, from Seattle, Washington to Dallas last July. And I met him at Success North Dallas, and Success North Dallas, Tim.
Yep.
I think I met him last October and November. And, I've been in Dallas for about 35 years. He had been in Seattle for 35 years. I love networking. I love putting people and projects together. So when we met, I understood when he said the word culture. I had worked for the number one retained search firm in Dallas was K. Bassman International.
Yeah.
And one of the things about K. Bassman that I learned early on is to make an executive placement or even helping them with their sales force. It was all about making a good corporate cultural fit. So I understood corporate culture at the minute he said it. So what Excellent Cultures has done for 44 years is it's corporate transformation, but it's from changing the culture. And when you change the culture at work, the ROI goes up, return on investment. CEO is looking for. And believe it or not, Tim, when you change the culture at work, you change the culture at home, because now people don't come home and kick the dog.
Yeah.
People are all of a sudden happier at work. There's more team cohesion. People are working. I just got off a phone call with somebody that said we have 155 employees, but really only 15 of them engaged. The rest of the people are, they just let things go. It's like they're just earning a paycheck. So 15 out of 155 people are really engaged in doing the job. And, this person possibly, Del Harris is going to be a speaker of ours at the next workshop. So besides working one-on-one with companies and doing the engagements, we do 3 workshops a year. So our next workshop that's coming up will be at Stonebridge Country Club, June 15th and the 16th. 2 speakers, Del Harris, who I've known from the Texas Legends, and Del Harris understands diversity and inclusions and building a team.
Yeah.
What he says is, the only thing that matters is not the color of your skin, but it's the color of your uniform. So I think the NBA is the greatest example of diversity working, because you've got people from Europe, you've got people black, white, Chinese, or Japanese in some case, and all united for one cause, to win a basketball game.
Yeah.
And so Dell's one of the speakers, and the other, one of the major clients with excellent cultures over the years for 35 years is Toyota. And one of the speakers is going to be the president of Toyota Puerto Rico. And through all the things that have occurred in Puerto Rico is now number 2 in engagement in all of the Toyota locations. And it's just because they get it. Their culture is working, and everybody's on one team. So they had amazing results through what we've been able to do in coaching them up. And the thing that's interesting about this is 1 year before COVID hit, I would say it was 2019, Steve had used to do work with Microsoft, and the manager that he had worked with in the past had headed up Microsoft University. Well, his new assignment was this Microsoft Teams. And yet this was 2+ years ago, way before the pandemic hit. And somehow or another, he gave him a killer deal to switch from Google to Microsoft Teams. And because he did that, almost everything he's been able to do in the last year has been virtual, the engagements. And I guess it was just a God thing for Steve.
Well, I mean, when you talk engagements with you're working with corporations that have multiple employees. Like you said, 115 employees at that one company. Right. And, you know what I mean? I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And the reason I'm an entrepreneur is I would go work jobs and I would be that mindless person. Okay, I'm just here for a paycheck. And I couldn't live with it. I'm like, okay, I don't need the paycheck that bad. I went off and created something I would enjoy doing.
Right.
And I assume you're working with these people to get them on the same enjoyment level than I'm on. All right. I mean, I love getting up in the morning and not knowing, all right, what problems are going to come. But when they come, I get overjoyed on solving them. That's just me. And it's it's that weird thing God put inside me. But I assume that you're trying to work with a lot of these employees to go, hey guys, all right, there's some joy to what you do and how you can change the world.
Well, I think it's 2 things, and you hit on it, Tim. I think it's key. The key is, how do we create heaven at work? And guys, what would it take? What do you need to see happen to make you wake up 2 hours early and be excited to come to work? And that's the kind of culture and environment we want to hopefully create for these folks. And there's an example that Steve gives, and it was about Delphi. Delphi, I guess, they had bought the division from GM when they were divesting some things, and then bought back. And there was a big problem between the union workers and the employees, and a lot of strife, a lot of things going on. But when Steve asked them this question, they said, the main question was, what kind of legacy do you want to leave to your children? And when he asked that question and did it anonymously in a survey, it was the same on both sides. The union people wanted the same thing as the other workers based on this. In Saginaw, Michigan, where Delphi was, everybody works in the auto industry. So naturally, you want to leave a legacy for your children, that's positive. And one of the union bosses, which, is a big, tough old guy, once he really got it and understood, he got this at home. He wondered why his daughter, when he picked her up from her basketball practice and, chewed her out a little bit, why she would be in tears. He didn't realize he was doing that same thing at work. In other words, leaders sometimes don't realize the defensive behaviors that they're creating in their workers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. All right. Because I mean, I got to tell you, I can go back through my years and I can tell you there's a lot of bosses that I don't remember because like they were weird. But I can tell you the bosses I remember either did something that I really, really hated or did something that really, really impressed me. And is it funny that the impact is made on both ways? All right. Now I'm a positive minded person. So I look at the guy who made me, the guy I hated, I looked at him and went, okay, what can I learn from this and how can I change it? As opposed to some people, they go, well, I hate this. So I'm pissed off at work. So let me go take this out of my wife. Let me take this out of my kids.
Right.
Let me take this out of my neighbor. All right. Or the guy or the server who's serving me dinner tonight. You know what I mean? And it relates. So what you're sharing and telling with us today is what you get from here. All right. Carries on. How I treat you today, John, will impact how John's day goes and how and the people that John, connects with after this conversation. And you're helping people to start at the root level. They spend more time at work than they do at home.
Right.
Let's fix it there, right?
Well, I think that the whole thing is, and you're right, it's the culture, the team unity. When everybody's pulling in the same direction, I think everybody's more efficient, more work gets done. I think that's the reason the ROI is going up, is because people are working to their maximum potential.
Yeah.
And
so, continue. Go ahead.
No, and hopefully they love their job. I mean, they're working to their potential and they love coming to work.
Yeah. So you and your team and the company you work for, John, a lot of the things that you're now helping implement and put out into these companies across America, are these things that, you learned because you made mistakes, or you learned because you were seeking something? Because so often some of the greatest changes come in the world is because people go, oh man, I screwed up. How do I fix this?
Well, I think it's this. I think if you ask most leaders, they'll say that they have a good culture, but when you give them the assessments that we have, the tool assessments, whatever you want to call them,
yeah,
it's going to show a different story. It looks, a person would engage us either because they have a pain or a passion. And by the way, I don't make it seem like it's only Toyota. We work with anywhere from a small startup, 25-member software company, to one of our largest clients would be Toyota. Okay. But the point is, Toyota, for example, is the leader that Steve's worked with through 3 different promotions is Jack Collis. Jack Collis is a former baseball player from Stanford, championship team at Stanford, went on to the Cincinnati Reds, was a shortstop, played under Pete Rose, and he blew out his shoulder, I guess, and went to work for Toyota. And Steve's worked with him through 3 promotions. Well, he said, we have a good culture, but we want a great one. Some clients are people that are athletic people that are team focused and want to have a great culture, not just a good culture.
Yeah. But so often I think, and this is why I was trying to get at in this question was, in my business, I work with a lot of more pain than passion.
Right.
And more people are in pain because of they screwed up. They made a mistake. They started in my place, entrepreneurs I work with, they started a company and they're hugely underfunded now because of financial mistakes they made when they started. In your case, what I was asking you, did you guys as a company find these solutions, let's take these assessments, to correct the problems? Did you start down this road because you've seen problems in your own world, your own life, your own business?
Well, no, I don't think Steve took it that way, but I think it has evolved into some of these cultural issues. I will say this. Steve originally started working, and his senior manager, senior partner, was a guy named Lou Tice. Lou Tice owned in Seattle had the Pacific Institute, which was a global company more involved in personal development. About 14 years ago, Steve kind of went out on his own as Excellent Cultures for the simple reason people stopped wanting just personal development and warm fuzzies. They wanted ROI. He did it through Excellent Cultures. Now, I want to say this. It's not just corporate transformation we do. It's like you say, with the leaders. We also do executive leadership coaching, organizational development, a lot of other things. So for that person, like you say, in a startup situation, maybe executive coaching is what that person wants. And we have industry expert I guess I'm saying that right, subject matter experts in a lot of categories that can help a lot of different companies.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's like, for me, I'm not working in that in the culture aspect. I'm working on the marketing side of how do I help you market to get more business. So you know what I mean? You're working with the people, all right, who have to change the lifestyle. I do understand that in order to get more marketing and get more money, you do have to change lifestyle sometimes and mindset to get you there. All right. And it's very much founded in what we do. But in your case, we see it that, a lot of people are coming in realizing that this is the pain point because I've made a mistake and now I need to self-correct, or I need a coach to correct this. Is that right?
Well, interesting enough, some of the pains that we are coming in and consulting against do involve, the sales department or employee turnover, things of that nature. And there's a lot of reasons why somebody engages in Excellent Cultures. And, there's a whole litany of pain points. And sales is one of them. I think I've seen a number of consulting firms just focusing on that whole area of sales development.
Sales, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's usually, usually in my industry, that's what you see. You see people in their coaching, they're either helping people with sales or they're helping people with marketing. I help people with marketing because I hate to say this, I suck at sales, so I learned how to over market. So that all the marketing led me a ton of people. So like when you got 10,000 people to talk to, it's very easy to get 5 sales.
Well, a lot of people that are involved in branding lately, and you'd be surprised at how closely it aligns with some of our philosophies, that nature, branding, and what we do in some of our cultural assessments and our cultural training. But I talked to a guy that was there almost day one at Apple with Stephen Jobs and all the things that they went through. And I think he worked for Apple, he worked for Disney and one other major company. And it seemed that, we just clicked very nicely, and branding and culture seemed to be a fine discussion.
Yeah. Cool. Well, John, there's always a question I'd like to ask people who are my guests. All right. And it's based on a personal experience in my life. When I was 22 years old, I worked a part-time job where a boss gave me advice that turned out to be not just advice at that job, which is what he was given to me, but it became life advice. It became a life-changing advice for me that I've carried with me ever since. And that was, he told me basically in a nutshell, told me to take ownership of my job, pretend like I owned the company.
Right.
All right. That has been a piece of advice that I've carried through my life everywhere I've gone. Did someone give you advice when you were younger like that you've carried it on? It's like it's part of your world now. They may not have intended it to be life advice. It might have been just advice to get through the moment, but it carried you into life advice.
Well, my first job out of college, I went to Jacksonville University in Florida, and I had a lot of different opportunities given me, and I somehow or another took this job with More Business Forums. More Business Forums has a presence in Denton, or it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I got this job, and they send me from Jacksonville, Florida to Waycross, Georgia, and I had all of Southern Georgia. One of the first sales training I went to, there was a lady, she got up and she was teaching a sales training course, and she said, the definition of sales that I've never forgot, and it's been my life, I think what's helped me in sales for 40 or 50 years, is she said, selling is a transfer of enthusiasm. And I'm 70 years old. I think I've still got passion and enthusiasm. And I think that's what's carried me in my whole sales career is just whatever product, whatever service, it's a transfer of enthusiasm.
I love that. I mean, that is, yeah, that is a great bit of advice, and I know you and I are both connected to the Ziegler Corporation,
Right.
And most everybody knows Zig for his one famous quote that everybody talks about. My favorite Zig quote has always been, all right, if you're afraid to go to church, all right, because you think there's too many hypocrites there, we always have room for one more. So why don't you come join us? That was always my favorite Zig quote. Anyway, what is it that, the Ziegler connections, all right, what is something that Zig's things inspired you in sales?
Well, believe it or not, one that I actually used back to Zig. I was in Zig's class at Prestonwood for years. And one of the things I used back to him when I guess he was going through some things, I said, the one thing I remember you saying, Zig, was go as far as you can see, and then you can see further. And I repeated that back to him, and it touched him that day.
Yeah.
He's forgotten that one. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, I been married 37 years. Probably 2 weeks before I was married in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, I went to a seminar that Zig spoke at and his brother Judge spoke at. So everybody thinks that Zig was the one that won all the awards for, I guess, the vacuum cleaners or whatever. But it's actually his brother Judge. And Judge spoke, and he talked about the year he was number one in that company. And he said his philosophy, when he would go up to the door and talk to people, his philosophy and saying was, I've got your vacuum cleaner, you got my money, let's exchange. And I've never forgotten that one either.
That's a pretty good one.
At that time was 2 weeks before I got married. Zig Ziglar signed one of his books to me, and he said, good luck in your marriage, etc. And I showed him that book 35 plus years later, or 30 years later, and he gave me a new edition and signed it for that time of the year.
Yeah. Zig told me to write a book, and I said, you should write a book. And I remember my first 2 copies of my book, Zig passed before my book was published, and so did my dad. And they both were my biggest encouragers. And the first 2 copies of my book, copy number 1, my mom holds to this day because it's Dad's copy.
Oh, yes.
Copy number 2, Lori has in the office. That's Zig's copy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's how much they've impacted me. So, well, John, it's been a really fun show. Really exciting to have you on here. What is the website so people can come over and check out you guys and how you're helping their corporations?
www.excellentcultures.com. You'll see a profile and things on Steve Gondra and how he started the company. And my profile's on there too now. But there's a number of the key people that have been part of this company. There's another gentleman by the name of Dale Hintz that's been with Steve for 14 years, right here from the Dallas area all this time. And he's a former marketeer for Interstate Battery. So I know a lot of people are, love Norm Miller and Interstate Battery. He's supported so many people over the years.
Yeah, another great Dallas area company. So, well, I thank you for being on the show today. But before we go, I've got a little game I got to play with you called This or That. I've got 9 questions that you get to answer. I give you 2 choices. You pick one. You ready?
Right.
All right. Number 1, Star Wars or Star Trek?
I never was big on either of them because that's my world, but I'll go Star Wars.
Okay, cool. You said you were someone into music and you said you were into it, so it would be country music or heavy metal?
I'd say country if I have the choices.
My third one, you kind of gave this one away early in the broadcast, but I'm going to ask it again, all right? Because you are in Dallas. Basketball or football?
I'll say basketball only because I went to a college that played UCLA in the finals.
So I got to say, though, if you're in the Dallas area, all right, and you're into football, all right, I got to ask you, or you're Texan, all right, I got to ask you, UT or TCU? But, I'm a big TCU fan now because I had 2 nieces go there. But anyway, Next one, we move on to food products. Taco or hamburger?
I would say hamburger.
Hamburger. Yeah, I'm a hamburger guy too. How about glass of wine or a bottle of beer for evening?
I would say in the past it would have been beer, but I've had to abstain for quite a while. The wife wouldn't let me buy a bottle of beer at the supermarket she wouldn't let me.
I've moved on, all right, because I've never was a heavy, I love tasting wines, like going to wine tasting with my wife, and never been a big taster. And now I taste beers. My thing with alcohol is I like tastes.
Right.
So I have this whole collection of bourbons and whiskeys and moonshines, and all I ever do is sip it. I got a sip. Okay, that's good. And I don't. I mean, when we were kids, we were like, how much can we drink to get drunk? That's not me. I was like, I can't do that lifestyle anymore. Anyway, let's move on. You are in the Dallas area, so which hamburger is better, Whataburger or Sonic?
I'll go with Whataburger.
I figured. I mean, that's a Texas answer right there, baby. My next one is a kind of unusual one I like to throw into people, and that is, which fight would you rather be in, a water balloon fight or a snowball fight?
I think the water balloon would hurt a little less.
Most people pick that water balloon on that one. I don't know. My two controversial questions to end up the game. Number one controversial question. The toilet paper. Does it go over on the roll at your house or under?
I would say over.
Okay. That's a controversial question. I have people start fights over that question there. So, How about the last one? Boxers or briefs?
I would say briefs.
Yeah. It's funny. You know what I mean? Some of us guys are just set in our ways, huh? Hey, one more time, John, I want to thank you for being on the show. Tell everybody your website and how they can come over and find out more about you.
www.excellentcultures.com.
Cool. So I thank you, John, for spending some time with us here today. All right. It's been a great having you on the show, and I appreciate you coming as my guest.
Thank you so much, Tim, and hope to see you at a future event.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to run into each other real soon. I don't know where, but real soon. Anyway.
Okay.
To you, the listener, I'm going to tell you guys, I want to thank you for coming by today. For those of you who watched live, we appreciate you. Those of you who are watching this on the recording, by all means, hit that subscribe button so you can get every copy of our podcast when it comes out, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Help us get our subscriber rate up on YouTube, all right, so we can impress more people in your neck of the woods with some of these great interviews. I'm Tim Gillette with The Tim Gillette Show, and I'll be back with another guest real soon. In the meantime, guys, have a